Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena isn't roses and bubbles. This is not going to be a walk in the park for either guy. But if you asked me this question before UFC 315, Bilal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena, I'd look at you, I'd scoff, and I'll be like, Islam by however he wants. I just rewatched Islam versus Dustin, and I looked a little bit back at Bilal JDM, and I want to say something because I've noticed like a lot of people who pick JDM to beat Bilal is like they're very confident that JDM's going to smoke Islam, and I've seen people who love Islam very confident he's going to smoke JDM, but it's deeper than both of those point of views, guys. Now, first of all, Bilal and Islam fight nothing alike. 'Cause I know the casuals like, oh, he beat a wrestler in Bilal, dude, so he's gonna beat a wrestler in Islam. But oh my God, their fight styles couldn't be more apart. Firstly, I'm gonna bring up, Bilal's game plan against JDM was to drown him. Even looking back at the fight, Bilal's game plan it wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad. Like as far as just like trying to go in there and break JDM, he tried to pressure JDM. JDM was just a little bit too sharp for that. Bilal wasn't shooting early. He was shooting a little bit later in the fight, which I feel like made it. Like I remember even in the corner, his corner, he was like, I can't. He's starting to get slippery. And once Bilal said that, I was like, oh shit, I forgot he said that in the fight, didn't he? And the reason he was complaining about him being slippery because by that point he started shooting and wrestling, he was already sweaty. Now I looked at the Islam Dustin fight. He shot on Dustin like a minute into the fight. He slipped, came back with a combos, changed levels, took him down pretty good. And the reason he took Dustin down pretty easily in the first round and controlled him for the entire first round is because they were fresh. As the fight elongates, you see Islam trying to take down Dustin, but it's a lot different because he's slippery. Dustin's like slipping out of these crazy stuff. And yeah, it makes sense. As fights go and someone gets slippery, it's going to be harder to take them down. So investing in the takedown early is usually the best game plan. And a notable thing I've seen Islam do, and not just the Dustin fight, but in a lot of his fights, he's constantly faking level changes. Now, Bilal doesn't do this, which is a little bit weird. He didn't do it in the JDM fight, but doesn't really do it at all. Like in the Leon fight, he kind of did it, but Islam does something where he has his arms stretched out all the time, and he always fakes a level change, even when he's not gonna shoot. But I've noticed it causes a weird reaction in his opponent. Like Dustin Poirier would like kind of like sporadically like almost sprawl, and like he was kind of twitchy because Islam does a really good job always keeping the takedown threat in the back of their head. Now having it, every single wrestler has a takedown threat. Merab has a takedown threat. Bilal has a takedown threat. All these, Usman has a takedown threat. But it's the people who fake the takedown threat. I think Kamaru Usman does it really well. Even in his sparring with Izzy, the way he fakes a level change made Izzy sprawl, or like the way in the Kobe fight, he even faked a level change, but he's not even going to shoot. But it just has the person thinking. Bilal not doing that probably gave JDM even more of a sense of comfort, like, oh shit, this guy's really going to try to strike with me. And then when Bilal would shoot a takedown, it was just really telegraphed and sloppy off the back foot. What I like about Islam Makhachev in a matchup potentially against Jack Della Maddalena is that he's going to constantly be doing this, the fucking the fucking level changes. And I like the way he does it because it always causes a reaction. And I feel like it opens up Islam striking really well. And Islam has deceptively good boxing. Like it's not like you don't look at Islam's boxing and you're like, oh shit, this guy's the fucking next best thing. But like he slips punches really well, and every time he slips, he always lands a counter over the top. He has a really good right. He's a southpaw as well. He's like an awkward southpaw. I say awkward because I've noticed a lot of Islam's fight chat, his movement, like, eesh. Sometimes he loses his footing because he kind of moves a lot. Like he's just a little bit, I don't want to say sporadic, because he's calculating his movement, but sometimes his footing's off. I blame it on his flat feet. Okay, listen, there's two types of flat-footed people. There's the Jamal Hills who flat-footed and they fucking platypus walk all over the place, and and then there's flat-footed like Islam Makhachev who moves well, but despite that, he still has flat feet, so he kind of like lands awkwardly, or like if he's bouncing, it makes him take awkward steps, and it leads to him when he does blitz, sometimes his footing gets mashed up and he can slip, and like you've seen in the Moicano fight. Situations like that. Against Jack Della Maddalena, what Islam shouldn't do is be too complacent on the back foot, because I noticed something about Islam Makhachev chat that is making it a concern for me. I'm not going to say he's comfortable off the back foot, but Islam is okay with being on the back foot. Against Moicano, he was on the back foot like primarily in the fight, and when the takedown presented himself, he had to like kind of come forward and like fake something and then go for a level change. typically how Islam does it. Islam always hides his level changes behind a strike of some sort or a counter punch of some sort. If you throw a punch at Islam and he makes you miss and then he comes back with counters, chances are a couple seconds later he's getting a level change. So I really like that about Islam. And listen, I know JDM has great takedown defense. You know, Bilal Muhammad specializes in the double leg. You know, JDM showed that he had good defense against the fence, against a double leg. You know, of course, Bilal did take him. Like, Bilal took him down. I'm not going to say easily, but, like, there was times that when Bilal, like, set up his takedowns appropriately, he got him down pretty comfortably. Or, like, if, like, JDM would get overzealous, Bilal would reverse him and take him down. JDM's not necessarily hard to take down. I will say his takedowns defense did improve significantly since that fight. Specifically, Gilbert Burns was taking him down with single legs. And it was almost like he was making JDM balance. And when he forced JDM to balance, he'll grab the single, put his shoulder into the belly, and then JDM will kind of go tumbling. But JDM will always keep a scramble up. So I always respect about JDM. But Gilbert Burns, the reason he's able to control someone like JDM in contrast to someone like Bilal, because Bilal did get him down in half guard, chat. And if he were to control him just right out the round, just ground and pounding him, he would have won. I look at Gilbert Burns, who had a lot easier of a time controlling him, and it all generates from the hips. Bilal Muhammad doesn't have heavy hips. He never really has, which is why you never really see Bilal on top of someone in half guard or full guard for the most part, because he just doesn't have the hips to hold you there. Well, in full guard, it's not hard to hold someone in a position, but he was in half guard. Half guard, you need heavy hips. People like Sean Brady, Gilbert Burns, these BJJ guys, they have naturally heavy hips because it's all they do and it's all they're used to. That's why Gilbert Burns was having an easy time holding him down in contrast to Bilal. Islam Makhachev has probably the heaviest hips in UFC today. I'd say him or Hamza. You know, all time probably Habib. But Islam does a really good job using his heavy hips to help him transition through guards. So Islam's not going to be complacent in a position. Sometimes Bilal gets comfortable in a position and ends up him, it just gives the opponent who's under Bilal some time to scramble. Islam is like really good at chasing finishes, specifically arm triangles, and like just anything that involves pressure, because he's just really good at making his body really heavy. Against someone like Jack Della Maddalena, who's good at scrambles, he has to be very careful against someone like Islam with heavy hips, because if you do force a scramble against Islam on the ground, he's so good at being heavy that when you think you push him off and you try to scramble back to your feet, and if you give him a slight chance, if you give up your neck or give up any body part that Islam can get a hold of, you could get submitted. If you guys remember the Moicano fight, Moicano was a great BJJ practitioner. He did a really good job pushing Islam off and trying to get back to his feet. But in the scramble is what Islam's the most dangerous at. Islam's ability, chat, to find submissions through scrambles is very concerning for anybody, especially good scramblers. You know, being a scrambler is always looked at as a positive because it is. It's not easy out scrambling like 99% of your opponents. However, with Islam Makhachev, his ability to find submissions through scrambles is, in my opinion, is what makes him one of the greatest fighters of all time. If you remember the Moicano fight, that submission was actually off a scramble into a darce. If you remember the Dustin Poirier fight, even late in the fight when Islam's tired and everyone's sweaty and fatigued, Dustin Poirier, he forced a scramble, he swung Dustin, and he won the scramble, got on top of Dustin, and Dustin tried to scramble out, he got put in a darce choke. His darce chokes through scrambles, anything about Islam through scrambles is hard to deal with. Now, JDM, who specialized, I think one of his best grappling attributes is his scrambling ability. It's a positive, but it can lead him to some negative exchanges with Islam Makhachev. So this fight, this is why I'm very interested in this fight, because I see both point of views. Like, first of all, I know Islam's going to get him down, and he's going to have an easier time controlling him and looking for submissions than Bilal, who's not really a huge finisher on the ground, you know, and that's going to be important for Islam in this fight. Now, as for the feet, I was looking at the Islam-Dustin fight. Honestly, guys, like that fight, like I feel like everyone has a notion it was close. I'm not going to say it was one-sided. Like there was some competitive rounds. There were some moments for Dustin. But overall, I was looking at the striking. Dustin Poirier was doing a pretty decent job. I feel like walking him down at points. Dustin's pressure is not as good as Jack Della Maddalena's, I'd say, because I feel like Jack Della Maddalena is a little bit more insistent on pressuring. But they fight kind of similar. Like I noticed Dustin and JDM kind of have like a striking style that they like to accumulate punch count on you, like kind of combos, and they mix up the target very well. Dustin like really goes body, 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 head. Same with JDM. I just think JDM does it better in perpetual forward motion. Like I see JDM throw his body combos like while moving forward at the same time, go body, body, head. It leaves him open for counters, which is why someone like Bilal's able to tag him up. Bilal's also a decent striker too, but like in a lot of JDM's fights, like Havas fights, the reason he's going to split decision with Kevin Holland and all these guys is that he's not necessarily hard to hit. So yes, if you give him respect and like get on the back foot too much, he will unload on you. But he's not necessarily a hard target, because every single time he opens up with these combos, he leaves his face like really open, but he's doing work with his hooks. It's just that they're very looping hooks. Someone with a quick straight punch could get down the middle really quickly against a Jack Della Maddalena, which is why we see him get tagged up a lot, and which is why Bilal was tagging him up with some straight jabs that didn't even look that quick or significant. It was just that JDM's defensive boxing is just not all that great. That being said, Dustin Poirier did have some success when he was pressuring Islam and just making an ugly dogfight and uncomfortable for Islam. And Dustin Poirier is not going to, like, JDM's going to be bigger and taller than Dustin Poirier, guys. Like, he's 5'11", Dustin Poirier is 5'9". You know, he's going to be size-wise. JDM might not look a lot bigger than Dustin, but he is because he's a weight class above. You know, so this is going to be a different, heavier weight class for Islam. So I want to see how Islam reacts to a pressure striker at a bigger weight class. If a pressure striker at a smaller weight class made it competitive, like I said, I'll say competitive. I watched back the fight and I was kind of like surprised about how, I don't want to say one-sided it was, but I was like, damn, I thought Dustin Poirier did better work than, I don't know, because I feel like, unless I'm tripping, but I swear, people be talking about like, oh, Dustin Poirier was fucking putting it on Islam. Yeah, there was moments of the fights like where like Islam would grab a clinch, Dustin would unload on him, but honestly, that fight chat, it was kind of one-sided, but there was some competitive moments. Thing is, though, I haven't seen Islam be forced to like fight on the back foot for a long period of time. Because in the start of Islam and Dustin, Islam took the center of the ring away from Dustin, and that's why he opened up the striking the striking and wrestling, because he pushed him back against the fence, and then you shoot takedowns. You know, but the JDM with his good pressure, I think it'll be problematic for Islam, especially as the fight elongates. And if he's not able to secure the takedowns, I don't know how Islam's going to react to a JDM. JDM is being underlooked by me before this fight, at least. I understand how good he is now. And, like, by a lot of people. And I see both point of views here, like they're going to smoke each other. But I do think the fight's a lot closer than people say. When the fight actually gets booked, I'll probably do an official stylistic breakdown and break down the styles a little bit more specifically. But as for right now, I understand that Islam's going to have to go through the fire to beat Jack Della Maddalena, you know. But I also say this, there's pretty much no better challenge. Like, this is the, I hate to say easiest challenge for Islam at 170, but is the easiest challenge. Like, Islam against a Buckley will be just dangerous because Buckley's power, like actual one-punch power, and like his strength and sheer size, it'd be probably harder to take down Buckley. You know, Shavkat will probably be harder for Islam. Obviously, Bilal, we want to find out. But, like, this is Islam's best bet. And do I think Islam's going to win? Yes. I can't lie to you guys. I think Islam's going to win. Islam's just really good at just constantly keeping the takedown threat in your face. He's good at counter-striking off the back foot. You know, he's good at coming forward and counter-striking and then turning it into some wrestling exchanges. He's good at scrambling and out-scrambling the best scramblers. So it lets me believe that he's probably going to beat Jack Della Maddalena here, but JDM is really good at what he's good at, and he's good at, if you give him respect, he will take advantage of that, and he'll put the beats on you like Dr. Dre, bro. Hands on you, lots of baits. But I want Islam fans to know this isn't roses and bubbles. Like, I used to say that JDM never hustled with the stars. He never tussled with the law. He probably never shook his homie hand after they punched him in the jaw. I thought he was nothing but a fraud, chat. I thought he was a fraud to a point. But what he showed in the Bilal fight, even though Bilal didn't use his wrestling to the best of his advantage, he didn't fake level changes, he still showed me that he could deal with pressure and he could come forward and put a beating on people who give him the chance to, you know. I don't think, like, Islam's so different. Islam's not going to be heavy on the pressure, which he shouldn't be. To beat Jack Della Maddalena, you just need to mix in level changes, and you got to use your kicks to your advantage. Bilal has such a good body kick, you didn't use it that fight. You know, Islam loves throwing body kicks and head kicks, and he's really quick with that. And someone like JDM who likes to high guard a lot of stuff, it leads to, people think it's stupid kicking in the arm. Like, I swear, like, I remember Izzy's coach was like, kick him in the arm to Pereira in the 287 fight. I'm like, what is this coach calling out? But in reality, it's not a stupid tactic. When you kick someone in the arm, it can lead to broken forearms. And JDM, who takes everything on his forearms, people like complain about the Gilbert Burns fight. Dude, he only lost because he fucking hurt his arm, dude. Guys, someone like JDM is taking the risk every time he's doing this shit to defend. When you're doing this to defend, like, you look, like, sure, he looks great, but you're taking damage on that arm. Islam is not, like, Islam doesn't necessarily always throw head kicks to land. I swear he throws it to just impact the guard of an opponent. Doing that against someone like JDM, who just relies strictly on his forearms for defense primarily, because every time he goes for a combo, his forearms are nowhere to be found because they're over here. They're at his waist throwing they're at his waist throwing his combos. So, like, that's why he's so easy to hit in the face, and his nose is always getting busted up, and his face is always getting busted up. But he's able to, you know, cause pressure. But Islam just even throwing that head kick to get, whether it's to get blocked, it doesn't matter. It's going to make JDM uncomfortable, mix it with the level changes. I just think overall, Islam Makhachev has too much moving parts for Jack Della Maddalena. That being said, it's not going to be roses and bubbles. I do think JDM's pressure can make Islam or put Islam in a very uncomfortable spot. And it's going to come down to, like, I feel like who wants it more at a point. But in the early rounds, like, I knowing that Islam's going to mix in the wrestling early because he does it in every fight, Islam's just shown that he takes the easiest path to victory, you know. I wouldn't say the easiest path to victory is taking out a Moicano and going for a finish because Moicano is a great BJJ practitioner, but it doesn't matter if you're a BJJ black belt. Like, Islam's going to submit you. If that's not the, he wouldn't have submitted Charles. He wouldn't have submitted Dustin Poirier. He wouldn't have submitted Moicano. But he just, like, he knew that Moicano was a little bit rangy and kind of tall for the division, so he just resulted in, like, yo, I'm just taking him down. I'm going to have my way with him. You know, Islam doesn't really play on the feet. Like, against Dan Hooker, Islam could have been like, yeah, man, I'm hands like Canelo. I'm going to go in there. All right, bro, I'm sorry. Hands like, nah, see, I'm just saying, Islam could be one of those guys who just have an ego because his striking is pretty good. Like, honestly, his striking is pretty solid. So he could have an ego and go in there with people like Dan Hooker and Dustin Poirier and all these, like, great strikers and be like, I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to strike with you. But Islam tends to take the easiest path to victory. And I think it's no secret that the easiest path to victory is going in there against someone like Jack Della Maddalena in wrestling and mixing in faking takedowns to go up top and just giving JDM a lot of moving parts. When you give a really good boxer a lot of looks, that's when they start to look a little bit like a little bit iffy. That's when they start to struggle the most, when you just give them a lot of moving parts, because JDM's not going to shoot a takedown on Islam. He could try. He's going to probably lead to him getting wizard, took him down in reverse, and then put in a bad spot. But JDM, I hate to say he's one-dimensional, but in a fight against Islam, he's gonna have one dimension to go do in that fight, and that's the striking and the pressure. You know, other than that, he's not really going to have any other look for Islam, where in contrast, Islam has a lot more moving parts. So that's why I feel like it's more comforting to pick Islam, and people probably understand this, but I do understand the hype of JDM and how everyone believes he's, like, unbeatable now because he beat Bilal. But I just think Islam and Bilal aren't necessarily the same fighter stylistically. I do think styles make fights, and I feel like Islam's style is going to be interesting against JDM because I want to see how Islam deals with the pressure, because I still to this day think Islam has never won against a sufficient pressure striker. Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliver, okay. On paper, he has won against pressure strikers, but I don't think people like Charles Chat necessarily puts intelligent pressure on someone. Like, when Charles pressures someone, guys, he kind of like, he's constantly walking forward, and then he'll explode into something that's completely unnecessary. And I question his fight IQ, you know, because sometimes he just explodes into a flying knee, like 1 inch, like, what are you doing, dude? Like, no setup behind it. That's how he got caught by Islam. So that's a pressure, but it's not very effective pressure. If JDM just does a good job being imposing in there and kind of like high guarding you and like making you uncomfortable the way he moves, his movement actually looks good. When he started flowing and like kind of showboating on Bilal, he looked really dangerous there. Like, he looked scary. I can't lie. I was like, damn, this guy could actually move pretty well. So let's see how Islam does against someone who has effective pressure and can move well, because it could be a bad night for Islam if he's not ready for the pressure and the size and maybe the pop and some of JDM's punches. I'm sure Islam has been hit hard by these other guys, but JDM's going to come with a different pop. JDM, of course, he doesn't have a one-punch power, but he has accumulation power. The more he hits you, the less likely you're going to want to take it. You know, I think Bilal has a great chin, and he lacks head movement sometimes, but Islam, who's a very safe striker, probably won't get hit as much as Bilal, and probably mixing the level changes and all that. But time will have to tell as far as what's gonna come out on top between a pressure striker and a well-rounded fighter who could kind of do everything well. It's gonna be close because Islam especially is going up in weight. So I don't know how strong Islam's gonna be in contrast to some of these bigger 170ers than he is in 155, because we know Islam has a significant strength advantage at 155. Like, every time he's squeezing someone, they panic tap pretty quickly. So we know he's a strong dude, but we're gonna have to see how that holds up in 170. I'm interested in this fight more so than I was prior. I really thought this was gonna be a walk in the park for Islam, but I can now acknowledge Jack Della Maddalena is a game opponent, and you know, I respect this guy. You know, a little bit, you know, I say negative things about you, brother. I respect you. You're a good guy, you know. We're gonna smash you though, you know. When the time's right, we're going to change your face. But nothing but respect to JDM and Islam. And if Islam, bro, if you go in there, brother, like not a real bad man, it could be a real sad day. You get me, bro. But let me know what you guys think about this matchup down below. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. It's going to be fun. But overall, I'm going to lean Islam. But like I said, anything is possible. And I do think JDM's pressure could make Islam very uncomfortable. But that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. And God bless. 2, 3.